Hey everybody, it's me, Jacques Belliveau, with the Millennial Depression Comedy Podcast, coming at you with a little mini episode of me answering some of the questions that I've received via the Reggie movie Instagrams and Facebook, as well as the email. And we now have a little phone hotline that you can call or text questions to. And if anybody wants to, they could also, like I said, reach out via Instagram or Facebook at The Reggie Film, or reach me at Jacques at HafCafProductions.com. Or if you want to leave a little voicemail or text a question at 980-272-8098. I love hearing from you guys. And like I said, ask anything you want. I'll be as honest as I can with the questions. Some of the questions are deeper than others. Some are very simple. So I'll do my best to try to answer all the questions eventually. So we'll get started. First question comes from Emma H. of Concord, North Carolina. And her question is very straightforward. What inspired you to do this podcast or the movie? Did one inspire the other? Did you have the idea for the movie first or the podcast first? Well, honestly, the podcast stemmed from the movie. That's years ago, I co-hosted a podcast, the Comics at Fault podcast, with a comedy buddy of mine, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was a creative outlet every week. It was very improv-based, not very educational or factual or deep. It did get deep at certain points, but it was very laughable. But I really enjoyed that medium, and so I've always wanted to do another podcast, but this actual podcast stemmed from the movie. And the movie, which other people have heard me talk ad nauseum about this, and you can hear it in my interviews I've done with other podcasts, the Pish Tosh podcast with Emma Rose, as well as the Katie Black Show. Both can be found on Spotify and Podbean and everywhere you find your podcasts. Also, I recently did a blog interview with Angry Sapiens, Samantha Perla. So you can find that at angrysapiens.com. But for those of you who don't have time to listen to that or don't want to read a blog, basically the inspiration for the movie came from my life. It's very autobiographical, mixed with a stand-up comedy set that I used to do about miniature horses and how they were able to become therapy animals. And then one day I had a stand-up comedy show, so I was going over my routine in my head as I was working out in the gym, which is another way I deal with my mental health issues is working out a lot, or at least I used to. I'm trying to get back into it because I've been struggling. And on my Spotify playlist of new releases, a song by the hip-hop artist Spose came on called Where Would I Be Without You? And I don't know what it was about the song. It was very, the music, the intro, the lyrics, everything about it gave me some sort of spark or feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. But that spark and feeling, I guess, mixed with the adrenaline from working out, mixed with the silliness of my miniature horses running rampant in my head. I don't know what it was, that mixture, that day, that feeling, that inspired Reggie. So I finished my workout. I went and showered. I got food. I thought it. I mulled it over. I couldn't get rid of that feeling. I went and I did my show that night. It was a great set. And then I went home and I wrote the entire first draft of the script that night on my phone. So yeah, that's how Reggie came to be. And it was very raw, I had to be very honest with myself when writing this movie. And the more rewrites I did, which totaled, I believe, 11 rewrites. So it went from the first draft being around 65 pages to it ended up being at 99 pages long total. And then still I kept, as we shot the film, we'd add or I would add and subtract things and develop characters and change situations and add real life situations. It's very personal to me. That's how the movie came to be. And then that was the first time via this movie how I ever talked about most of this stuff that I'm going to share with the whole world via distribution of this movie about a miniature horse. So yeah, that's how Reggie came to me. And then eventually that spawned this podcast, because I found that the only way that I've ever been able to be honest about anything to myself or to anybody else, I guess, is to think of it as a job. And when I come to the podcast, I mean, I love doing podcasts, but work ethic's always been really, really important to me. So framing it in a way to where it's something I do as work makes me a lot more honest and a lot more hardworking at doing it, I guess. So that's where this came to be. So thank you, Emma H. from Concord, North Carolina. The next question comes from Raleigh, North Carolina, from Keith M. And some of you, I don't know. It's a question. I'm not saying it's mean-spirited but it's just a question. And I said, I told myself that I was going to answer all the questions. So here's what he says. What makes you so different than other entitled / privileged white men who use depression and anxiety as an excuse to treat people badly? Well, Keith, guilty. I have used that excuse before, even before I knew what label to put on whatever it is that I'm struggling with. And I'm not saying that I'm different than anybody else, except for maybe I'm trying to change. I'm trying to get better. I'm not using this podcast or this movie or anything as a way of absolving my sins, as they say. Just as my way to communicate why I am the way I am, I guess. And I've gone to therapy. I've taken steps to make amends with people that I've hurt in the past, because I've lied to people. I've hurt people on purpose to get them away from me. I've done it. Sometimes I did it without even realizing it until it was too late, and then I realized my cycle or my habits had snuck up onto me when I thought I had control over that. I'm not saying that I'm different than any of these other so-called entitled / privileged white men who use depression and anxiety as an excuse to treat people badly, because it's not an excuse. My actions are my responsibility, no matter what I'm suffering from. Even if, some of the things, the underlying causes aren't necessarily my fault, I still have to take responsibility for them. So I'm not so different, except that maybe I'm trying to make it better, and maybe I am trying to talk about it a little bit more to maybe make it easier for these other so-called privileged / entitled white men who use depression and anxiety as an excuse to treat people badly, to maybe not do it, or maybe to realize they're doing it, or to help them have an outlet to say, hey, maybe there is a way that I can get out of this habit of doing it. So I don't know, Keith. I'm not saying I'm different, but I'm trying to own the fact that I've done some shitty things, and I hope, I can't change the past, but I can try to change myself for the future, and maybe not only try to forgive myself for what I've done, but try to earn the forgiveness of other people. So yeah, that's it. And then one more question from Sydney. Sydney. I've always had issues with Sydney versus Cindy. I don't know why, but saying, like, in my head, it sounds good, but when I say it out loud, it's just weird. Anyway, Sydney, SYDNEYD of Athens, Georgia. What efforts have you made to improve your mental health, and what has worked? Are there any that haven't? Are there any that have and you fell off the wagon? Well, Sydney, going back over the years, efforts in general, good and bad, suppression, burying it deep, workaholism, stuff like that. I would not suggest to anybody. It makes you old before your time and gives you so much stress. But I have used those things, and I've been trying to not use those as a crutch anymore, though I find myself going in and out of workaholism a lot, especially with starting a new production company and recording this podcast and other podcasts and doing the movie, also working my full-time job. that is something I don't suggest, though. For better or worse, it has worked at times for me. But then, I've gone to therapy, the sit down therapy on a couch, which it helped to a certain extent until I found that I could, or I wasn't being 100% honest with myself, so that it was impossible for me to be 100% honest with the therapist. I guess because, not that I didn't trust her, I didn't trust me, and I didn't trust what I would think of me or how I would treat myself going in there and saying certain things out loud. And I don't know, it's all about wanting people to like me, I guess, or not wanting people to judge me and not wanting people to think that I'm not strong or smart. I don't know what it is, but it's very difficult for me to be 100% honest with anybody, even a so-called non-judgmental space or person like a therapist. So I've done that, and I've also I've experimented with actual horse therapy, like full-size equine therapy, which is cool. I just need to get past the feeling silly part, which is weird to me considering what I do. I do comedy, I do all this acting and stuff, and I still feel silly, and that's a lack of self-esteem, a lack of confidence, is really plays into that a lot. And it's just feels silly to me that I need these things, or I potentially need these things to be normal or get to what normal is. Working out has always been a huge thing for me. Not always. I was a fat kid, but since those days. But when I started making this movie, I put all my effort into telling this story and being more verbal about my mental health and all that. And I fell off the wagon as far as working out goes. I was, I ran over 200 and some Spartan races and obstacle course races. I used to power lift. I taught spin classes for years. And then during this movie, there's only so many places I could be and so many hours in the day, and fell off that pretty hard for about 9-10 months. And I'm struggling to get back into it now. So it's a double-edged sword. I didn't work out forever, and then I went back and started trying to do what I was doing before, and I found that I was actually stronger in certain things, which just gave me this weird thing in my head. It's like, oh, well, if I'm stronger than before, I obviously don't need to work out as much. So then I've been neglecting the gym, and it's just a weird cycle. And I struggle, and I hate myself every day. I don't go to the gym, but when I do, I go, and I'm like, man, hold on to this feeling, because next time you're laying in the floor and you don't want to go to the gym, remember how good you feel after, and it never works. But I'm struggling. I'm trying with that. Music has helped a lot, just to get my creativity flowing. Playing ukulele, playing guitar, whenever, performing with Boomerang Clip Soundtrack, hosting open mics. Those always help. But all these things that help, I dread doing beforehand until it's happening right in the middle. Then I love it, and then so I'm not currently seeing a therapist, mostly because with the movie and everything else, I'm strapped as far as financially goes. I put everything I have into these projects, and so self-care in that sense has had to take a back seat. But I hope to, maybe re-engage in that at some point in the future. I think it could help. But I've also been trying to be a little bit more open with friends and stuff to maybe, that's not been working either, but it's a process. And then the past 6 to 7 months, I've lashed out and done things to push certain people that are super close to me away, and so I've lost people that way, which I don't blame them at all. It's my own fault, and then sometimes, like in my cycle, I do things that I know are shitty, and then I don't admit to them right away. I just put them in like a vault for later use for when I need a quick out, and then I just casually let it out, and and that's a way I've dealt with getting people to hate me or resent me or walk away from me. So I've done that, and then I more recently had to walk away from another relationship that just, I don't know. That was a crappy situation. I won't go into too much about that. Sydney D from Athens, Georgia. But it changes day to day. Sorry, I went on a little diatribe about what actually works for my mental health. Like this helps, even though I've been dreading doing this. But no matter what wagon you fall off of or what doesn't work, there's always other things to try. So I urge everybody to try any opportunity they have to, even if you think there's a 0.01% chance of it working, I feel like you should at least give it a try, which I've not always been that open to, but I just try it. My goals coming up would be, I would love to try a little harder with attempting meditation and stuff like that, which I've always struggled with. I hate sitting still. I always need to be doing something. I found a lot of my self-worth in my productivity. But I feel like that'll be good for me. And then trying to get back into the gym or in some sort of physical shape more consistently. And then I've also been trying to make it a goal of mine to be social at least once a week at this point, because I'm social never at this point, unless it's a work type related event. So those are my goals right now, and I hope that kind of answered your question. Sorry, I just went off on a little path of storytelling through the woods of blah. Anyways, so thank you all three of you guys for submitting those questions. And if anybody else has any questions for me, I mean, my favorite pants to my lowest point, whatever you want to know, or if you have questions for past guests, or if you have questions that you feel like I should ask future guests, just please submit those. You can, like I said, Jacques at HafCafProductions.com, or via the social media for the movie at the Reggie Film on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to leave a voicemail or a text message, once I figure out that whole voicemail recording adding to this thing, then I can actually play those and then answer them at 980-272-8098. Thank you guys. I really appreciate everybody. And I hope you guys stay strong and keep going. Bye.